This poem is called Selling Manhattan, and so I'm going to start with the soap stiff. So there are two speakers in this poem, and the easiest way to tell is the first speaker is in italics, and the rest isn't. And and the occasion is colonizing Manhattan, which you figure out after reading the poem, and also the title hints at it definitely. The audience, from this point on, the audience is the Dutch colonists, and the speaker is the Native Americans, and you know it's talking to the to the Dutch colonists because it says you a lot. It directs it toward them. The purpose is to recognize the wrongdoings of the colonists to both the land and the natives. It just points out all their flaws and definitely starts to blame the colonists for ruining the land, saying that you'll poison it. No good will come of this, of you being here. The subject is the actual purchasing of Manhattan from the Native Americans, which you can tell by the title. The tone is very bitter, helpless, and sarcastic. It's bitter because it's saying, the Native Americans are saying, "You've made me drunk," which sounds quite bitter to me, blaming them again. And helpless, it says right here, "As when my loved one fell back into my arms and died," which is very helpless to watch a loved one die. And also a little sarcastic when the Native Americans say, "I wonder if the ground has anything to say," which is also personification, but obviously the ground won't respond, so it just seems it implies that the earth won't approve with what the colonists are doing, but also seems a little sarcastic to me. The theme is that the colonists are greedy and unappreciative of both the land and the Native Americans, I think. You can see right here it says, "I got myself a bargain," from the Dutch colonists, which means they really only care about the land, about the money. They do want the land, but they don't treat it well. And now get your red ass out of here. They're just not very nice to the Native Americans for selling them the land, especially because the Native Americans probably didn't want to. They're kind of forced into it. The title, Selling Manhattan, it's very literal, because obviously the Native Americans sold Manhattan to the colonists. And it's also kind of coincidental because there's so much buying and selling that goes on in New York City today. For imagery, there's visual and organic imagery. For organic imagery, I felt like "You made me drunk," because drunk is also, as well as it being an actual state, it's kind of a feeling if you feel drunk. And visual, a little shadow runs across the grass and disappears into the darkening pines. That kind of gives you an image of something, of what's happening. And then the figurative language is personification, metaphor, simile, hyperbole, symbolism, connotation, and diction, which I will point out. So, starting in the beginning of the poem, you can definitely tell that the Dutch colonist is addressing the Native American because it uses the word Injun, and Injun is another word for Native American, so that's diction that Duffy uses there. And then there's also it's the Dutch colonist because it says that they bought it for $24, which isn't historically true. It was for more than that, but that's the myth, and it elaborates on the idea that it was very unfair on how the colonists went about getting the land from the Native Americans. And the word brandish means to wave threateningly. So it says, "I brandish firearms and firewater." And firewater is alcohol. I think I spelled that wrong, but alcohol. And then it says, "Praise the Lord," which I took to mean they're thankful that they're superior and that they can treat people badly, that they can treat the Native Americans badly because they're the superior race. And then when it says, now get your red ass out of here, it's very derogatory. And just, it really, this whole stanza really characterizes the colonists. And it characterizes them as bad and not caring for anything but themselves, very selfish. And then the next line, I wonder if the ground has anything to say, is personification. It also implies that the ground, like I said before, isn't happy with what the colonists are doing, and obviously the Native Americans aren't either, because the Native Americans treat the land with such respect and the colonists do not. And then it goes on to say, you've made me drunk, and drinking is something that you do when you're upset or you're grieving, or you're just facing a lot of troubles that you want to forget about. And the Native Americans were definitely facing a lot of troubles when dealing with the colonists. So the colonists have driven the Native Americans to being drunk. And the world's slow truth and rapid lies, but today I hear again and see plainly, means that the colonists are telling so many lies to try and cover up and justify all their wrongdoings, because they're stealing land, they're killing people just for their own selfish reasons. But eventually the truth will come out, and they'll know that the Native Americans were right in the end, and in the end the colonists won't win. And this is just saying that the Native Americans, we know that you're lying, we can hear your lies, but we can see the truth. And this is another personification saying that the earth is sore. Well, it's just meaning the earth is hurting. So I wonder if the spirit of the water has anything to say, which is again personification. And there's a lot of personification in this poem because the Native Americans really did honor the land and really appreciated it as if it was an actual person that they loved. So that's why they try to make it a person, or Duffy tries to make it feel like a real person. And then they're really starting to blame the colonists when saying that you will poison it. So accusing the colonists of ruining the land. And then this next line, that you can no more own the rivers and the grass than your own air. Air isn't tangible. Whereas rivers and the grass is. So even though you can have the property of on a river and you can have the property of a grass, the Native Americans are saying you can't own it, you can't have it, just like you can't actually have air. Air is all around us and it's everywhere, but you can't physically grab hold of it because it's not yours. And then the word sing here I think is really important. This is connotation. Because this line, I sing with true love for the land, is basically saying I represent the land and I care about the land and I'm standing up for the land. But the word sing is more emotional and a more powerful word than speak would be. So I think that's definitely connotation where the Indians feel so strongly about the land. And there's alliteration in the next line with song, sunset, starlight, and psalm. And I think the fact that psalm is definitely, well, it's obviously referring to Christianity, which the colonists were, and it starts with a P instead of an S, even though it makes an S sound. So maybe it's saying that Christianity is fake or wrong. Just like the Native Americans they honor the land, but they don't really believe in Christianity and I think it's kind of foolish that the colonists use Christianity to justify themselves for their wrongdoings. And then, trust your dreams, no good will come of this. This sounds almost like a dare to me. Like when your parents have told you so many times, like, don't do this, it's bad, like they warn you. Okay, if you do this, don't come crying to me when it all goes wrong. And so when it says, trust your dreams, no good will come of this, it's just like the Native Americans have done everything they can to stop the colonists from doing bad things, but there's nothing else they can do. And then, my heart is on the ground is showing connection, again, that the Native Americans feel very strongly about the earth. And then, which is deepened when it says, as when my loved one fell back into my arms and died, which there's it really sets the feeling of helplessness for the Native Americans, because they're literally watching a loved one die and there's nothing that they can do about it. So they're watching their land being taken away from them, and it's gone. They can't have it anymore. It's died to them. And the next line just is basically saying that the Native Americans are wise and are a little more accepting of what's happening, because they know that in the end the colonists are doing the wrong thing. That the Native Americans aren't wrong, it's the colonists that are in the wrong, and that eventually they will get avenged for it. And then this next line is a metaphor for life. In the distance between morning's frost and fireflies flash at night. It's in the time span of a day, but I really think it symbolizes their whole life. Again, just the fact that the Indians were wise is what it adds to, or what contribution it makes. In man who fears death, which fear is definitely the key word here. The colonists are afraid, and they feel like if they get more land, that they will be more powerful and will have less to fear. And so it says, how many acres do you need to lengthen your shadow under the endless sky? So implying that the colonists are scared and that they need land because land equals power. But shadow under the endless sky, the Native Americans are saying that no matter what you do, you can't be powerful. Because under an endless sky, you can never cast an endless shadow. And then it says, last time, this moment, now, which is just saying that this is happening too frequently, that the colonists are taking too much land too often. And a boy feels his freedom, and then the next line is vanish. The next word is vanish, but it's on a separate line, and I think this space is kind of a build-up. Like, you feel like there may be a little bit of hope, a boy feels his freedom, and then the next line, all hope is lost, and it says vanish. So I think the syntax is really important there. And this next part is a simile. Like the salmon going mysteriously out to sea. This is obviously comparing the boy's freedom. He's losing his freedom, like the salmon is, when he goes out to the sea, he's not in his own bearings. He's very lost and very powerless, which is also stands for a metaphor for what the Native Americans were when they were pushed out to the west into lands that weren't theirs, into environments that they weren't familiar with. Yeah. And then So this next line is really important because it's all on its own. So there's a lot of emphasis on this line. I live in the ghost of a grasshopper. The grasshopper can jump great distances because, it's a grasshopper, it jumps. So like the Native Americans moved great distances. They were forced to, but they leapt into the unknown. So that's what the grasshopper symbolizes. And then the buffalo is also just in general a representation of Native Americans. The evening trembles and is sad. Trembles here, I think, means scared, when you're trembling of fear. So it's just showing that the earth is scared because of the colonists, and also sad that this is what's happening, that this is what the colonists are doing. And this is an important line to say. It says, "A little shadow runs across the grass and disappears into the darkening pines." It's also imagery, but if you look back here, it talks about the colonists needing to create shadows of acres, of many acres, to expand, to look as big and powerful as possible. And here it says a little shadow, and the little shadow is a Native American running across the grass and disappearing into the dark pines, which sounds very wicked to me. And that the Native Americans were pushed out of their homeland, and even though they weren't taking up too much of the land, weren't mistreating the land, they are being the ones who are pushed out, and they're gone. Thank you.